The impact of DeepSeek, R1's release, continues to expand. Having once severely hit the stock prices of giants like NVIDIA and forced technical teams at companies such as OpenAI, Meta, xAI, Google, and Microsoft to work overtime, studying and replicating DeepSeek. Some have called it the Pearl Harbor moment for the US tech industry. As a Chinese, I believe we don't need to overinterpret DeepSeek. It is an open-source program, not something mysterious. It operates based on scientific principles, not magic. As long as Americans adhere to these principles, they can replicate a US version of DeepSeek. The US hasn't lost anything. The real losers are the speculators hyping the generative AI bubble and the Silicon Valley tech giants blinded by vanity. Most of my AI videos were released before DeepSeek R1, or even DeepSeek V3. From the beginning, I pointed out that the US hasn't produced a technological innovation capable of truly transforming social productivity in a long time. All the major tech concepts it has hyped recently have ended in failure. The approach of Wall Street and Silicon Valley's nouveau riche is to replace one bubble with another. Let's briefly revisit this. Over a decade ago, virtual currencies led by Bitcoin began to sweep the globe, and Americans started hyping blockchain, creating countless wealth myths. However, people often overlook that virtual currencies, apart from wasting vast amounts of electricity and consuming GPUs and computing chips, do not directly generate any value. Without government-backed credibility, they can never be used in daily production and life. Decentralization contradicts the operational models of all nations and large institutions today. It can only be meaningful in limited contexts. Currently, virtual currencies have become tools for criminal organizations, used in pyramid schemes, gambling, fraud, and even by celebrities to exploit the public. For example, Elon Musk hyped Dogecoin, and the Trumps launched their own meme coins. Later, Americans began hyping the metaverse, with even Facebook rebranding itself as Meta, seemingly ready to lead humanity into a virtual world. Yet the reality is that most VR headsets are now gathering dust in corners. Apple's release of the Vision Pro ultimately changed nothing. These two technological concepts, which from a normal technical perspective could never transform society, were wildly hyped by Silicon Valley and Wall Street for years. Yet when they faded away, no one asked, what value did they actually create? The answer: zero, or even negative. Compared to the resources they wasted, the meager value they created is negligible. These so-called innovative Silicon Valley companies, packaged with tech buzzwords, went public, allowing investors to reap hundreds or thousands of times their initial investments. Meanwhile, IT professionals saw their compensation skyrocket, working 4 days a week, remotely, with paid vacations. Even if their companies went bankrupt, they had no worries. As long as their resumes were strong enough, Silicon Valley never lacks new hype, and there's always a suitable job waiting. Another question: are these people smarter than Chinese engineers? Can they create better products than the Chinese with just 1/3 of the working hours? The answer is simple: no. In fact, most of the top American students would not be able to get into a good university in China. That's the gap in education between the two countries. A fundamental truth is this: when your labor force is less capable, smaller in number, and less hardworking than your competitors, you will lose the competition. No matter how big your lead, if others are sprinting forward while you're asleep, you will lose your advantage. So when Americans started hyping generative AI, no one asked, how much value can it create? The combined revenue of industry leaders like OpenAI and Claude is only in the tens of billions of dollars, while the products of smaller companies are mostly industrial garbage. Yet NVIDIA, a single provider of computing chips, once reached a market cap of $3.6 trillion. Ultimately, we must return to applications. The functions of all large models today are still tool-based. Organizing documents, generating AI voices, interactive Q&A, etc. At their core, they are still programs, with no relation to true AGI. Meanwhile, some wildly hyped AI image and video generation applications remain stuck in the demo stage, with no practical use in sight. The U.S. manufacturing sector has become severely hollowed out, leaving the U.S. with an advantage only in software during the AI era. In hardware, it has completely lost the ability to compete with China. The U.S. chip advantage relies on the entire Western alliance, particularly South Korea and Taiwan in Asia. Although Trump called for bringing manufacturing back to the U.S., the reality is that American elites have long been busy hyping tech concepts in the stock market, while the U.S. government constantly fuels wars, accumulates debt, and the Federal Reserve manipulates the dollar's exchange rate and prints more money. These factors have driven up U.S. prices, making it impossible for businesses to survive. The American middle class is under continuous pressure, and traditional industries are facing increasing survival challenges. We can step back from the tech war perspective and ask a macro question. In 2018, when the U.S.-China trade war began, the U.S. GDP was $20.66 trillion. In 2024, it is $29 trillion. In the past 6 years, in what industries, through what forms of labor, and by creating what kind of social wealth has the U.S. achieved such GDP growth? Or what technological advantages has the U.S. created that significantly improved productivity? The answer is none. The U.S.'s ability to create wealth has been declining rapidly, but its ability to hype wealth, harvest the world through the dollar, and profit without effort has been increasing. But this comes at a cost. It's a vicious cycle leading to an endless abyss, and once trapped, it's hard to escape. The U.S. must have world-leading technology to support its military and economic hegemony. The fact that the U.S. government couldn't kill Huawei proves it has lost its technological leadership. The release of DeepSeek is just another blow. Science doesn't lie. Smart, hardworking, and collaborative teams will win. It has always been this way. The false prosperity built on hype and exaggeration cannot withstand the test of time. This last sentence is for the fans of the Bard Empire. Finally, we need to thank the DeepSeek team for releasing this technology in an open-source manner. I hope that large companies in China and the United States can actively support the open-source community to make it more vibrant. If scientific and technological progress is beneficial to the entire human society, then open source some technologies so that small countries that cannot invest in R&D like China and the US can also share the benefits of technological change. The development of China's IT has received huge resource support from the international open source community, and Chinese technology companies have also given back to the open source community. When the United States has a closed trend in the fields of economy, technology, etc., China should actively maintain an open ecosystem. From the perspective of national strategy, no country on the earth is indispensable. And closing the country is definitely a wrong choice.